Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin. Check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blooded is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. Don't forget to send gear to represent your team. The address is P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. Yeah. Guys, I'm not feeling all that great today, so if I don't have as much energy as I usually do, that's why. But I'm still going to give it my best. So I really like my subscribers, and I encourage my subscribers to leave comments because sometimes you guys have great video ideas, and that's exactly what this video is. It's an idea given to me through a comment on one of my videos. This comment was submitted by Dan's Power Clean Services. So I'm just going to quote this comment real quick. I think this makes the conference fall further behind. He commented on the situation with the Pac-12 where they fired 2 executive directors because they didn't report overpayments that they knew about. The remaining schools will start to look at more attractive payout packages, as the bottom line in college football is now how much more money can we make more than ever before. The so-called 4 corner schools will leave for the Big 12, who seems to be on the right track. The age of the super mega conferences has only just begun. This fails when ESPN can't sell more expensive cable contracts and people can't afford the exorbitant prices. What will happen to the mega conferences then? Remember, nothing is too big to fail. Back to the original alignments after the fail. Hopefully so. So what he's saying is, in certain scenarios, and I would agree, in certain situations, I do think that this would fail. But there are situations where I don't think it would fail. Let's talk about the situation where I don't think it would fail first. This scenario is based on if the SEC, Big Ten, and another conference survives. So the SEC has Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, and Vanderbilt. Let's say they add 4 teams from the ACC: Clemson, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and NC State. For the Big Ten, they have Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, Wisconsin, UCLA, and USC. And let's say they add 4 teams from the ACC as well: North Carolina, Duke, Georgia Tech, and Virginia. And let's say that the Big Ten also adds Stanford, which attracts Notre Dame. So they also add Stanford and Notre Dame. The SEC sees that Washington and Oregon are very valuable, so in spite of it not making sense and Washington and Oregon being well outside of the southeastern part of the United States, the SEC does pick up Washington and Oregon because of their worth. Now for the Big 12, they have Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, and West Virginia. They also add 4 teams from the ACC: Pitt, Louisville, Syracuse, Miami, Florida. On top of that, they add the 4 corner schools, or 3/4 of the 4 corner state schools: Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State. And they also grab Washington and Washington State. This is 3 leagues with 22 members, and I think enough representation is there to where this would actually be fine. Now, whether what conference gets who, that's not part of what I'm trying to talk about. I'm just saying each conference gets 22 members, and there's enough representation to where I do think that this would survive. The scenario that I don't think that this mega conference thing would survive, if only the SEC and the Big Ten expanded and decided to split off from everybody else. So for the SEC, once again, Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, and adding Clemson, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and NC State. The Big Ten, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, Wisconsin, UCLA, and USC. Adding North Carolina, Duke, Georgia Tech, and Virginia. So 2 20-team leagues splitting off from the rest of the NCAA, creating their own national championship playoffs. And of course, they would probably include Notre Dame. Notre Dame makes a lot of money. Now, I'm not saying that the Big 12 wouldn't exist anymore, but they would be considered more of the leftovers not included in this situation. And there's a lot of big brands that would be part of the leftovers, which, by the way, I will do a separate video just on the leftovers conference, so stay tuned for that as well. So teams missing out would be, well, current teams in the Big 12: Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, West Virginia. Out of the Pac-12, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, Washington, Washington State, Oregon, Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford. All of those would be missing out. But on top of that, leftovers from the ACC as well. Pitt, Syracuse, Miami, Florida, Louisville, Boston College, Wake Forest. And then the bigger names out of the group of 5 conferences. Say a Boise State, a James Madison. Yes, James Madison is very much up and coming. Appalachian State, East Carolina, Fresno State, San Diego State, Memphis, SMU, Navy, Army, Air Force, your military academies, they would be left out. USF, and then Yukon, Nevada, New Mexico, and Wyoming, just for the sake of argument. So that means that the SEC and the Big Ten would be split off from the rest of the NCAA. They would create their own playoffs and national championship. They would include Notre Dame, but the rest of these teams would not be a part of that. Now, they could create their own national championship and playoffs, sort of like a tier 2 playoffs type of situation, but I don't think these teams would like that. Now, the group of 5 teams, they would be more than happy to do that because the group of 5 teams really don't have a chance to win a national championship at the highest level. And I do understand with the new 12-team playoff that the highest ranked group of 5 champion is guaranteed a spot in the playoffs. But really, how much of a chance does one team represented out of the group of 5 conference have as far as winning the actual national championship? Not much at all. They're basically just throwing them a bone to say, hey, we included you. But the rest of these teams who are current Power 5 members, they're not going to be happy if this happens. This would include 28 former Power 5 schools. That is a lot of schools that used to be in the Power 5 that would not be included in the playoffs and national championship that the Big Ten and the SEC would create. Now, there's a couple examples on big things failing and thriving. The first example of a big thing that actually is thriving is Walmart. Walmart took over. They're one of the biggest distributions, if not the biggest distribution, and they're just fine. But on the flip side, in sports, we have a direct precedent and an example where in Europe they tried to take the biggest brands and create their own league, and it failed miserably. So there's 2 separate examples. It could go either way. Now, on top of that, the non-FCS states, so not your North Dakota, not your South Dakota, not your Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, states that only have FCS schools, these are the states that would not be represented whatsoever at the highest level for the playoffs and the national championship. The states of Washington, Oregon, West Virginia, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, Kansas, Massachusetts, I know, Boston College and UMass, but you still got to count them because they have FBS teams there. Connecticut with Yukon, New Mexico with New Mexico and New Mexico State, Nevada, Idaho with Boise State, and Wyoming with Wyoming. So now you know why I included those other teams on that list. So yeah, there's 2 different paths. And the more they shrink the fan bases represented at the highest level for the national championship and playoffs, the higher the likelihood that this will fail. They need to include as many fan bases as possible, make it as affordable as possible as far as the TV packages. Otherwise, yes, I agree with this subscriber and commenter that it would fail. So y'all let me know in the comments section, do you agree with this? Do you think that if the SEC and the Big Ten split off at 20 teams apiece, maybe even 24 teams apiece, you're adding 8 more teams. If they split off from the rest of the NCAA and the rest of the conferences, they will fail because people would just not be interested and the prices would be too high. But that if they included the Big 12 and a lot of these other teams, that way the fan bases are more represented, that it would actually succeed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.